Hey guys, David the Fishing Pastor here, and it is Tuesday once again, and you know what that means. It's time for another Tackle Talk Tuesday. In today's episode, I'll be showing you my rod and reel arsenal, so let's talk about it. Hey everybody, welcome back to another T3 episode. Took a little break last week to spend some time with my family, but I'm back at it today. In case you're tuning in for the very first time to Tackle Talk Tuesday, I'd love for you to go back and watch some of the other episodes, and I will link those in the cards above. But Tackle Talk Tuesday is a segment pretty much where I talk about fishing and other fishing related topics, and maybe some non-fishing related topics sometime in the future as well. But today I'm going to be talking about my rod and reel arsenal. So I'm actually going to be breaking this down into two parts or two different episodes. Today's episode and next Tuesday's episode. As many of you know, and maybe some of you don't, I am a KastKing brand ambassador, and I primarily use KastKing products, but I do still have rods and reels that are non-KastKing, and those are the ones that I'm going to go over today, and then next week I will go over my KastKing rods and reels. So let me start off with one of the most well-known bait cast combos, and that is the Abu Garcia Black Max combo. You can find this in so many places, including Walmart, which is, I think, where I ended up getting it. And I've had it for a while now. It's widely used, especially by a lot of beginners who are just learning a bait caster. The reel itself is a 6:4:1 gear ratio reel, so it's right in that mid-range there. It has 5 bearings, which isn't super high, but again, it's this inexpensive kind of entry-level bait caster. I have it spooled up with some 20-pound braid, and I have it paired up with the Black Max rod. It came as a set. The rod itself is a 6'6" medium rod. It's about a moderate to moderate fast action rod, and it has a pretty good bend on it. This is actually my shortest bait cast rod, which I like because I'm actually kind of on the shorter side. But I use this primarily for what's tied on here is a popper, a topwater walking bait, a jerk bait, anything that I have to twitch or sweep or anything like that. It's just easier for me to do with a shorter rod, so that's really what I use this for. This next setup has kind of a special place in my heart because this is the setup that started it all for me. This was my first bait cast setup, and it was actually given to me by some friends who knew that I enjoyed fishing, and up to that point I had only fished spinning gear, and so they got it for me. And like I said, this is kind of what started it for me. This is, I already enjoyed fishing. I liked fishing with the spinning gear, but once I got a hold of the bait caster and I started to learn how to use it, and it just opened up a whole new world for me. And this is the Abu Garcia Silver Max. The reel itself that I have on here is not actually the original reel that it came with. That one ended up breaking on me, and so I had to replace it, but the rod is still the original rod. The reel itself is a 6:4:1 gear ratio reel. This one has 6 bearings as opposed to the Black Max that has 5, so still not super fast or super high end, but again, it served me well. It did end up breaking, which, you know, I don't know what happened there. It could be that I just pushed it beyond its limit. I used to throw literally everything from jigs and Texas rigs to crankbaits and spinnerbaits and heavy baits, things like that. So it could be that I pushed it beyond, but it is the only bait cast reel that I had that broke. So, you know, I don't know what that says about it. But the rod itself is a 7-foot medium heavy rod, and it is a very sturdy rod. It's fairly thick for a medium heavy rod, but it handles baits well. And yeah, like I said, I used to throw everything on it. Today I rarely use it, but I have like a Carolina rig tied on right now, maybe jigs, things like that. Because the rod is fairly sturdy and thick, I like to throw kind of some bigger baits. But again, the reel itself maybe can't handle those, so maybe just kind of an all-around mid-range, you know, if you're going to use it for different things. I wouldn't throw anything too heavy on it, you know, big swim baits or anything like that. But yeah, like I said, it served me. Unfortunately, the reel itself broke, but I did replace it, and that's the Silver Max. So the next setup that I have here is another Abu Garcia setup, and if you're noticing, there's a trend here. Most of my setups were Abu Garcia, and this is, I believe, the second setup that I got after the Silver Max. I wanted to start to specialize in my rods and reels a little bit, started kind of build up an arsenal, and got into crankbait fishing, started to love crankbait fishing, still do today, one of my favorite ways to fish. And so I went on and I found a crankbait setup. I found the Abu Garcia Ora winch setup, and this is actually the Ora winch reel right here. I ended up replacing it on the Ora winch rod, but this is made for crankbaits. The reel itself, it has 8 bearings, but it is a slower reel. It's a 5:4 to 1 gear ratio reel, which is great when you're fishing deep diving crankbaits, things like that, big bills. They have a lot of resistance. Really great for those kinds of baits, but not as great for shallow diving crankbaits, which I used it for anyways. I used it for all crankbaits, but I found that I had to catch up and reel faster and exert more energy to try to catch a fish with this reel. So I ended up replacing it with the Ora Sx reel. This is a 7:1 to 1 gear ratio. Also, I believe has 8 bearings on it, but a whole lot faster and a whole lot easier to throw those shallow diving crankbaits, which is primarily what I throw. It's rare that I throw deep diving crankbaits, but if I do, then I always have the slower gear ratio reel to fall back on. But primarily, like I said, I'm going to be throwing square bill crankbaits, shallow diving crankbaits, even some mid diving, which is fine. I would rather have to slow down on a faster reel than speed up on a slower reel. So I ended up, like I said, switching it out. Both spooled up with 12-pound fluorocarbon line. And the rod itself is a 7-foot medium moderate action rod, and really just perfect. This is my, like I said, my square bill setup. Still use this a lot because it's such a really great setup for crankbait fishing. And it has again that really good parabolic bend on it. Helps me keep the fish on when I'm fighting, and the added speed on the reel itself makes such a difference. Really, the difference between a 5:4 to 1 and a 7:1 to 1 is huge. And there's a lot of times where I really did have to find myself like catching up to the fish. I even had a subscriber notice on a video of mine about that, having to really reel a lot faster, a lot more, because I'm taking up less line. But like I said, once I switched it out to the Ora Sx, I really had no problems. It's a great square bill setup for me, and like I said, the rod itself is made for crankbaits, which I love because again, I love crankbait fishing. But still, both reels serve their purpose. Both, like I said, spooled up with 12-pound fluorocarbon, and both used for crankbaits. But this one's more shallow diving, and this one's more deep diving. So the next setup that I have is another Abu Garcia reel, but not the rod itself. And this is the Revo Sx, and it's a 7:1 to 1 gear ratio reel with 10 bearings on it, so it's higher end than the other ones that I showed you. But this was actually the first high-speed reel that I bought. Like I said, I started to specialize, and so I wanted a kind of a flipping and pitching setup, jigs, Texas rigs, things like that. I love to fish that as well. And so I decided to go with a higher speed reel. This is probably the most expensive reel that I have. It was about $160 when I bought it, and I'm sure they're much cheaper now. I think they're like $100 or something like that if you can find them. But yeah, like I said, first high-speed reel, spooled it up with some heavy braid. It was, I think it was 50-pound flipping braid or something like that. It's been so long since I've used it. But like I said, first high-speed setup for me, and then the rod, I ended up going with a number 8 tackle blackout rod. I know they don't make this rod. I don't even know if number 8 tackle is still around. I think they were like an offshoot of 13 Fishing, so it may have just merged or something. I can't remember exactly. But this is a 7'3" medium heavy rod. Has a lot of backbone on it. It was a fairly inexpensive rod, but like I said, it has a lot of backbone on it. Did really well for me, and this was the longest rod that I had at the time. And primarily, like I said, used it for flipping and pitching jigs, Texas rigs, things like that. So the last baitcast reel that I have for this video has a Shimano Casitas reel, and I wanted to kind of offshoot off of the Abu Garcia reels, kind of see what else was out there, so I decided to go with Shimano. This is a 7:2 to 1 gear ratio reel. This is really the only Shimano reel that I have, and kind of use this as my general overall all-purpose reel. I have it spooled up, I believe, with some 30-pound braid. And like I said, I would just use it kind of for everything. Ended up pairing it up with a Manly Rods Gold Series rod. And this rod I actually won in a tournament. And this is I believe it's a kayak fishing rod. And I did a comparison video with this one, but it has the adjustable butt here. And so I think it's from 6 foot 9 to 7'3" or something, depending on how far out you bring it. But this is actually a moderate, medium, heavy rod, so it has a really good parabolic bend. This is really great. I use this a lot for lipless crankbaits, things like that. It's a really great reel for that. The reel, it's a great setup. The reel itself casts pretty far. The only thing that I didn't really like was the handle's kind of small. It's a very, I feel like it's really close together was the only thing. But other than that, worked just fine for me. Still use this one occasionally. I was using it last time I had a spoon on here. Yeah, again, it works really well. Great parabolic bend on the rod itself. It's still a firm rod, and it's my only. It's actually technically a crankbait rod. It's a cranking rod because of that good moderate action on it. But it's a medium heavy, so it's a little bit more firm than the Ora winch. But like I said, I like to use this for just a wide variety of different baits and lures. And the last setup that I have here is a spinning setup, and this is my go-to finesse setup. This is the Daiwa Crossfire setup, and I bought it again as a pair, I think from Dick's Sporting Goods, fairly inexpensive. And the reel itself, I have it spooled up with some 10-pound braided line, and it's a 2500 series, which is my favorite size for finesse fishing. Really used it mostly for drop shots, things like that, but it was my go-to, and I've caught 4-pounders on it, and I actually ended up breaking off the tip of this rod twice. Once I caught it in my car door, and the other time I think I caught a lure on it and it just snapped it off. So I've replaced the tip twice on there, and although I rarely use it today, I still have it. And like I said, just a simple little setup. It's a 6'6" rod, or at least it was when I first got it before I broke it. But just a simple little setup that, again, I used for finesse fishing, and now I have some other rods and reels that I use more primarily, but like I said, just did the trick for me. And it just goes to show you don't need to go out and spend a ton of money, and I'm going to really focus on that in my next week's video when I talk about my casting products, because I got to show you some really cool stuff there that I have with those casting rods and reels that'll save you a whole lot of money and still give you some really great products. But like I said, this was my go-to finesse setup. Daiwa Crossfire, don't even think they make it anymore. Again, I would always have a spinning setup with me. I think it's essential to have a spinning setup on your boat, kayak, or in your arsenal, or whatever. Mostly have bait casters because I mostly fish them. But if I'm going to fish some finesse stuff or just some lighter lures, then I'm going to definitely go with a spinning setup. Okay guys, there is part 1 of my rod and reel arsenal on this episode of Tackle Talk Tuesday. And even though, like I said, primarily I use casting products today, which I'm going to be showing next week, and you do not want to miss it because there's some really cool stuff in there, I do still use some of these products as well. And even if I don't use them as much, I like just knowing that I have them there as a backup just in case. If you use any of these products or you have any comments about them, leave that in the comments section below. Love to hear from you guys. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It's free, and I will see you guys in my next video. Remember to pray, fish, repeat. God bless. I'll see you guys next time.